You're listening to the GeekWatch Podcast, Episode 7, with your hosts, Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petry. Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to Episode 7 of the GeekWatch Podcast. My name is Brian Hatcher, and it's been a while. Actually, it's been a long while. Our last podcast was on July 3rd, and so that's over 5 months since the last one. And so, well, here's the reason why. My co-host, Tony Slack, because of family issues and there was a project or two that he wanted to work on, he decided that he was going to go ahead and leave the podcast because he wanted to focus on these new areas. And of course, I gave him my blessing on it. I believe in people should follow their dreams. And so, of course, we here at Geek Watch give him, we wish him the best in his new ventures, which seem to be off to a great start. So, but they did leave me with a situation where I needed to figure out what I was going to do with the podcast because I didn't want to just sit here and talk with to myself. I didn't want to just pontificate. I think that, for me, and I think for a lot of you, that the fun of the podcast is having a conversation. So I realized that what I needed was a really strong co-host to do the podcast. And fortunately for me, I found one. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you the new co-host of the Geek Watch Podcast and our own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petry. Hey, Mandy.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Mandy.
Hi, I'm Mandy. I guess maybe one of the reasons, it's been so long is kind of you trying to talk me into being your co-host, because you call me a geek goddess, but I have told you over and over again that I consider myself a mediocre geek.
Well, you very much have the geek thing down. I mean, one of the things we had to work out, of course, was we needed to make sure that the recording schedule didn't interfere with your Dungeons and Dragons time.
Yes. And
so now, going a little bit about, so that we can let the audience know a little bit about you. You're a gamer, obviously. You do costuming and cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
And you also like Doctor Who.
I am. I'm a Whovian.
So we have advanced where Tony was not a Whovian. We've got one now.
Yes, and I'm a neo-Whovian, and we call you an Orthodox
I'm
Whovian.
True, because I've seen the old school. I've seen the old school stuff.
Because Tom Baker's your doctor, right?
Absolutely.
Of course, yeah.
Well, you can see behind me this big long scarf.
I see the scarf. Yeah.
With a you'll notice, of course, that behind on top of the scarf is a fez. So, I believe in both the Old and the New Testament.
I do too. Yes, and I have actually crocheted, I think, 3 of those scarves now. Yeah, I didn't knit them, but I can crochet. So I've made a few of those.
So you're also an artist and very much into geek arts and crafts. So I feel like this is going to be this was a good get.
I hope so.
So
I'll work really hard for you.
And
thank you for asking me and considering me at all.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you have the time to do this, and thank you for taking the co-host spot. And on with that, let's talk about. Let's get into some strange things that have been happening in Hollywood recently with. Disney has been busy.
Right. It seems like we're getting ready to have a big shift, I guess, would be shift in power. Maybe not power, because Disney was always powerful, but...
Well, they're pulling all the stops to get all the geek properties.
Right.
I mean, they have, in a way, they have become so much like Galactus, they now literally have the rights to Galactus.
They've eaten the planet eater.
If somebody out there hasn't heard about this at all, and I don't know how you wouldn't have, there is a deal now with Disney that they're getting ready to purchase Fox. Not all of Fox, but most of their movie and entertainment properties. And so, because of that, that's going to allow them. They're going to have the rights not only to the majority of the Marvel properties that they didn't have rights to before, namely the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, but it's also going to give them rights to the original trilogy Star Wars films, which since 20th Century Fox was the first distributor, they still had the rights to those. So they're going to be able to kind of bring them into the fold as well. And so, and they, of course, they were able to do that because of the success, first of all, with the Marvel films, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and now bringing Star Wars back, and they have been very successful. And so they've been making billions upon billions of dollars. So now they have billions upon billions of dollars to spend. They've kind of turned into Hollywood Godzilla. They're just going right through and taking everything that they want. In fact, there's been some rumors, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's some rumors that Disney's in talks with Sony, and that they may be pulling them in as well. So, and I'm not sure if I think this is a good thing or not. I'm not sure. I'm thinking, and I think mostly that's because, I mean, obviously Disney has done a great job with their properties so far, but at the same time, I always like to see new voices, a new way of. I like to see competition specifically. I mean, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. As far as I guess the business side of it, I don't exactly understand all of that. Most people are excited about getting to the fan service. They're getting excited. Okay, now we're going to get to pull all these things together. But is that going to give them sort of? Are they going to be the AT&T? Are they going to have all the power? And if you have all the power and you have nothing coming against you, and there's no underdog, no one to make you want to work harder.
Oh yeah.
What's your motivation? If you don't need to get any better than this, why do you need to push yourself? Like Usain Bolt, fastest man on the planet, but he knows that at any time, someone else can break one of his records, so he's still training. He doesn't quit. So.
Oh yeah, well, the funny thing about competition, I mean, certainly competition brings the best out of everybody. I think under these circumstances for Disney, if they're going to want, at the situation they're in now, where they're sort of on the top of the heap at this point, they're going to have to get to a point where they realize that their main competition is themselves. I mean, I think that's the difference between Microsoft and Apple, for example. Mm-hmm. Simon Sinek, who's an incredible mind when it comes to competition, to business, and that sort of thing. And he talked about how he did 2 talks, one for Microsoft and one for Apple. And the whole difference was he did this talk for Microsoft, and he had one of their iPods, and everybody at Microsoft was just looking at it. They were just staring at it, and they're breaking the whole thing down. They're like, "What does this thing do that what we can't do, etc." And they were just asking him constant questions. But before he left, they gave him a Zune. Do you remember the Zunes?
I can recall hearing about the Zunes.
Our friend Kevin Pauley had a Zune, so it was Microsoft's version of the iPod.
Okay,
exactly. Yeah. And it did a lot of interesting things. It was a very good piece of equipment. Obviously, it didn't ultimately take off, and Microsoft kind of dropped that one. But for a while, they, this was going to be their answer to the iPod. And so Simon Sinek goes to Apple to do his talk, and he's there with one of the executive vice presidents. And he felt like stirring things up a little bit. And he says, "You won't believe what I just got." He says, "What's that?" And he says, "I was at Microsoft, and they gave me their new music player. It's called a Zune. And there's some things about it that are better than the iPod." And the vice president said, "I'm sure that there is." And that was it.
They didn't try to...
No, they didn't care because they weren't in competition with Microsoft. They were in competition with themselves. Huh. They weren't worried about what Microsoft was doing. They were worried about what they were doing. Mm-hmm. So, now, I mean, obviously, with Apple, they have a wonderful tendency of noticing what other people do, and then suddenly their stuff starts doing it. You know, they do definitely learn those lessons from successes from other people, but you can't dwell on what your competition is doing. And in a real sense, I think that was the problem that Warner Brothers has been having. And since we're talking about Hollywood Godzilla, of course, we have to talk about the other side of it, Warner Brothers, who is trying to do pretty much the same thing that Disney's trying to do. They just haven't done it as well. You know, they've done 4 superhero movies in their DC extended universe. 3 of them haven't done quite as well. There has been one film that has done better. Wonder Woman, definitely.
Yep, Wonder Woman.
And was the most popular of their films, critically and with audiences. And it was the number 1 superhero origin film of all time. It made more money than any other superhero origin film. Mm-hmm. So the success was definitely there. There was a possibility for them to do something good. Problem is, I really wonder if Warner Brothers knows why that movie worked. I'm thinking they're looking at this and just scratching their head, and they're not sure why that movie worked, because they didn't think it was going to work at all. They gave it next to no advertising budget, and they just thought this was going to be a knockoff. I mean, it was so bad at one point that if you saw Justice League, the designs for Themyscira weren't the same as in the Wonder Woman movie. They made
that was like a big internet, blow up controversy and saying this is what it should look like, and this is what it looked like.
Well, they didn't think anybody was really going to watch that movie, so they didn't really care. And it's not like they couldn't get that kind of information. But again, Warner Brothers being more concerned about what Disney's doing, what Marvel Studios is doing, trying to reverse engineer that, they didn't put things out that were playing to their own strengths. I mean, they have the most iconic superheroes,
absolutely,
in their canon. They do.
Superman and Batman.
And Wonder Woman. I mean, you say female superhero, first name's going to pop up as Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then you're going to go maybe to Batgirl, and even on the villain side, you probably say Catwoman before you would say,
or Joker,
before you would even go into some of the great female heroes, the Invisible Woman, and any of the X-Men.
Well, here's the thing about Marvel. Here's something. Except for a few rare situations on the Marvel side, most of the female superheroes that people know about are just gender-swapped male versions, mm-hmm. for the most part. I mean, there are a few. Like, mm-hmm. Scarlet Witch isn't, Invisible Woman isn't, but, I mean, Black Widow isn't, but, you've got Captain Marvel, was Marvel, a male. You have She-Hulk.
Right.
Now you have 2 different versions of She-Hulk, but mm-hmm. you have She-Hulk. But, Spider-Woman.
Mm-hmm. And now, I can't believe I forgot. Oh, the Norse god. They just changed
Thor.
it. Yeah, Thor became a woman just, a few years ago. And
Jane Foster.
Yeah, but the good, but sort of goes along with the mythos of the Norse gods and their, the very old fables.
Oh, yeah.
And that sort of goes along with it as, being transformed into a different gender. Was
well, I mean,
a big theme throughout.
Well, here's a little bit of Norse mythology that's not going to wind up in the Marvel movies, but of course, Loki's a shape changer. Well, Odin's steed, the horse that he rides, which you see him riding in the first Thor movie, is actually Loki's son, because Loki decided to change himself into a mare and wound up getting pregnant. So he couldn't change back without killing the child. So he had to wait until he delivered that child, the foal, before he could change. So he was stuck as a mare for a while. So Loki's that horse's mom. So. Because, there you go. But, which is hilarious, but it'll never show up in the movie. Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't see it happening.
No.
It would be great.
Well, they do give nods to a lot of the Norse mythology. I mean, you see Huggum and Muggum, the two ravens.
Okay, ravens. I knew there were wolves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Fenric the wolf showed up in the third Thor movie. Thor, not Thor, but Hulk winds up fighting the wolf. But yeah, you see the two ravens on occasion. They don't, like I said, they don't point them out, but if you're looking for them, you see them. Mm-hmm. So there's that sort of that nod to the mythology. But going back to Warner Brothers, is I think their biggest problem is they've panicked because they're trying to come up with a formula, the Marvel formula, instead of basically coming up with their own formula. Mm-hmm. And who knows, in 2 or 3 years, does Warner Brothers get bought out by Disney? Does Disney just basically eat up everybody like Pac-Man? I don't know. Of course, again, in about less than a year, the federal government has to basically give their seal of approval to the Fox Disney merger, and they could say no, this is too much of a monopoly, and it doesn't happen. But here's the funny thing about this: they've got the deal that Disney has with Fox is that if the merger doesn't go through, Disney is still going to give Fox $2.8 billion for their time.
Oh.
Billion with a B. $2.8 billion. It's like, no hard feelings.
Yeah, it's just here, guys. It's no problem. No, I know that we've talked about it before with our friends and things, just thinking that pretty much exactly 30 years ago, that Disney was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was their time right in between, the one with Billy Joel, Oliver Twist.
Oliver and Company.
Oliver and Company, versus, then came The Little Mermaid. Mm-hmm. And it, that was like, they called the Disney Renaissance, was starting with The Little Mermaid, and that's when Aladdin and The Lion King, and everyone really, started noticing Disney again. And I think about the live actions, and I can't think of any of it without thinking of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right.
I mean, it was that same time period, and they were doing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, so there really it was a big Disney Renaissance, and all the characters they got for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I mean, they're all in there. Warner Brothers, everyone's in there, and we could have that again from this merger, I suppose. I guess I've made the joke about now Bart Simpson's going to be in the next Kingdom Hearts video game. Now, I don't play video games, but
the thing was, of course, on The Simpsons, they did predict that Fox was going to get bought out by Disney. They did that like 3 or 4 years before it happened.
Yeah, I mean, The Simpsons has predicted a lot.
Yes, they have.
Like Matt Groening, he's the he's the next prophet. He's our Nostradamus, I suppose.
Yeah, there's on the Pat McAfee podcast. Pat McAfee he was a kicker for the Eagles, and he was a kicker for WVU.
Oh, wow.
Trivia. I managed a wrestler that he fought in the ring.
Oh, wow.
So I used to be an enemy of Pat McAfee, but there's a video of him on his podcast talking about all the different ways that Matt Groening and that Matt Groening has to be a time traveler, because all the stuff that he predicted, like 9/11 and the Trump presidency. Even to a point where they shot the video, they basically had Trump coming down an escalator in the same angle that you see that
hand wave.
The same hand wave. I mean, it was just, so it's crazy,
frightening. So, is this a time traveler's joke on us, or a crazy person's actual predictions?
Well, who knows? But
prognostication, is that?
Well, the thing about it is, I haven't seen anybody do a. They haven't done anything where Matt Groening made predictions of the future that didn't happen. We're only talking about and after so many years of sort of making these jokes about the future, some of them are going to come. Some of them are going to come true.
Of course, they're going to come true. It's one of those. useless, or not useless, but irrelevant statistics. Like, most shark attacks happen in 3 feet of water.
Yeah.
But shark attacks happen in 3 feet of water because there are people standing in 3 feet of water.
Exactly.
So it's a, it's a useless statistic. Yes, it's true, but it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Which is true. But
one of the big things that we used to talk about was when the Passion of the Christ came out, all the millions and millions of people who went to see it, and then they said, oh my gosh, so many people had heart attacks when they went and watched the movie. It's like, well, let's look at the statistics of the people who had heart attacks when they went to see Star Wars. It's probably the same thing, because that many people going to see something, of course that's going to happen.
Oh yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like there's a lot of, on the one hand, when you've been putting out as many shows as they have done over the years, of course, there's going to be these moments where they're obviously going to hit. On the other side of it, and this was something else somebody pointed out. Well, Pat McAfee pointed out, was there's an episode where Homer Simpson, he's for some reason discovers he's really good at math. And so he's like a beautiful mind. And so he's standing in front of this chalkboard. He's working out this formula. And it's a formula for the God particle. Are you familiar with the God particle?
I've heard that phrase.
Yeah, the God particle. It's like, it's supposed to be the primordial form, where all matter comes from. And it's the Higgs boson collider is how we discovered it. Mm-hmm. All right? But he's doing this formula, the exact formula for the God particle, 4 years before they had discovered the formula. Wow. It's the exact. So it's like there's coincidences, and then
there's kind of pretty crazy,
And as Pat pointed out, he's like, Matt Groening also did Futurama, and it's like, now he's just rubbing our face in it. It's like a guy that's gone into the future.
I love Futurama so much.
Oh yeah, so he's just, at that point he's just rubbing your face in it is what he's doing. He's like, yeah, I time travel.
Yep, I'm just gonna play my jokes on you guys.
So I guess basically to kind of put a coda on this whole thing is that it's going to be really interesting to see what Disney does. I mean, next year we get the everything bagel known as Avengers Infinity War, where it's got everything in it, and then you're gonna have X-Men, and you're gonna have Fantastic Four on top of that. Where does it go from there?
Yeah, but is that going to be a Hieronymus Bosch painting of just all the characters?
Well, the poster certainly looks that way, doesn't it?
We're just going to get like 2 seconds of each character? And I understand they're all established and stuff, but is it going to be the point to where it's is it that movie Slackers? That's just a bunch of vignettes of different people. There's no main character. Not that I won't go see it. Not that I won't be so excited.
Well, I mean, the one thing to keep in mind too is now not only does Disney have money to burn, they've got characters to burn. I think people are going to be dying left and right in this movie. So it'll be, do we lose Iron Man finally? Is he going to die in this one? We'll see. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And of course, I'm also looking forward to Black Panther. That movie looks so good.
That looks so good.
That movie looks so good. I can't wait for that film.
The planets, everything it does. It looks so exciting. And and I rarely go out and see movies. That's one I want to see. I want to see that, and I want to see Ocean's 8.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just, feminism, yeah, way to go. It looks really good.
Oh, yeah.
The trailer looks really good, and I love all the people in it.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, there's going to be some good stuff coming out in the theater, but it's also going to be interesting to see what happens on the Warner Brothers side, because their next superhero movie is Aquaman. It's toward the end of next year. Mm-hmm. So that's a long time.
Long time away.
And they're already making plans of doing superhero films outside of their universe. So it looks like they're working on kind of breaking things up a little bit. And it's interesting because a lot of people said, are they just going to do a reboot of the DC universe? And conventional wisdom says, man, you've got to do that because they've had so many misses. But at the same time, do you reboot Wonder Woman when it did so well? That makes it. I mean, if Wonder Woman would have tanked, that would have been different. But it did really well. And
like in the past, I don't know, a decade or so, they had attempted Wonder Woman, then they attempted another Wonder Woman TV show.
Yeah, which was horrible.
I didn't even see it. Did they get past the pilot at all?
No, they didn't. They never aired the pilot. Yeah. I saw the pilot leaked on YouTube for a little while,
and they snatched it up.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. I mean, we could do an entire show on this. Other people have basically talked about this pilot. It's wretched. It's like it's what I expected Wonder Woman to be in the DC universe, except for the fact that Patty Jenkins was directing. And I knew she had chops. Mm-hmm. My only concern was Warner Brothers going to interfere too much so that she couldn't do what she does best. Fortunately, they didn't. And for the most part, there was, of course, Patty Jenkins talks about how she had to fight tooth and nail with the producers to keep the No Man's Land scene in the movie. They wanted to cut the whole thing, which is insane. It's like one of the best parts of the movie. And they wanted to cut the whole thing, which you have to wonder, are you guys nuts? Do you not know how these movies work? And apparently it just seemed like they didn't.
That's the thing about, with director's cuts and watching them, and are they good? But ADHD moment here. The man who was the kicker for the WU and has a podcast now was
Pat McAfee.
Pat McAfee. Okay, you said that you managed a wrestler.
I managed a wrestler known as War.
Okay, what was his name?
War Pig.
War Pig. Okay,
yes.
Now what was Pat McCaffrey's?
He was just Pat McAfee.
That's it. Oh, he didn't have some cool nom de guerre.
No, he didn't. Well, because he was basically what had happened was we were traveling a little bit with the. Normally we just did wrestling shows out of Charleston, but we decided to do a wrestling show up in Morgantown, and so we went up in Morgantown. And Pat McAfee was in the audience and loved it and became a fan of IWA East Coast, which was the name of the wrestling company I used to work for. And so he was a big fan of the War Pig. And so he came to Charleston and he's like, man, I want to wrestle War Pig. And like, well, sure.
So do I know War Pig? Have I met him?
I don't know if you met. Now we're going to kayfabe this, but it's like we protect the damn business. But Carter Jelacic is the guy that played. You've met Carter.
Yes, I know Carter. Okay.
Yes,
oh my gosh, what did he wear?
He wore a big rubber pig head mask. He wore a t-shirt and khaki pants and army boots, and he also wore this big bloody apron. So it was kind of a cross.
Amazing.
So it was kind of, and this was long before Pork Chop. If anybody knows that movie,
yes, that's what I was just thinking. This is Pork Chop.
Yeah, Pork Chop ripped off War Pig. That's I'm just going to say that now, but it's okay.
We'll keep that a secret.
That's a secret. That's a secret.
But watch it. But watch Pork Chop.
Oh yeah, exactly.
if you're listening, watch Pork Chop.
Oh, there you go. But it was, and of course Pat McAfee winds up going over in the match. He wins with a super kick, which is. If you watch WWF and you remember Shawn Michaels, he did a thing called Sweet Chin Music. That's a super kick. And we thought, and that's how he beat the War Pig, because he's a kicker. Mm-hmm. So he beat him with a kick.
Now, I don't want you to think that I know who Shawn Michaels is because I watched WWF or WWE. Well, I did like once or twice, but my sister, Cecilia, was just... I mean, those were the posters up in her room.
Oh, I see.
had posters of Leonardo DiCaprio. She had posters of Shawn Michaels, and she had a life-size cutout. It was, before fatheads and stuff. This was cardboard, and there he was in his chaps and everything.
Well, your fanhood is a fanhood.
Fanhood is a fanhood.
Exactly.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So, well, before we end up, we do have to point out that Christmas is almost here.
Yes, it is. It's solstice right now.
It's solstice right now.
I don't know when you're listening to this, but it is solstice.
Well, we're recording on Thursday, and I'm hoping to have this up Thursday evening, Friday morning. So, but and of course with Christmas and a Whovian, that also means that there's a very good chance that the main character of your favorite show is about to die.
Yes.
And that's what's going to happen
on the odd numbered yeared Christmases. Doesn't that happen?
Well, it's been kind of. I mean, this has been kind of of course. Peter Capaldi is going to be leaving Doctor Who, and it was kind of strange because we had sort of a silence, a Doctor Who silence, because between the last Christmas special and the one before it, which is between the Husbands of River Song and the Return of Dr. Mysterio, there was no Doctor Who at all, so it kind of went silent for a while. And then after after Dr. Mysterio, he came back for one more season, and now we're getting ready this Christmas for him to regenerate to a new doctor,
yes,
a female doctor,
female doctor.
And you've been working on the cosplay. For that.
I have been working on a Jodie Whittaker cosplay.
Yes.
I'm so excited about it. I have all my pieces except my suspenders and my coat, and I don't get to see her sonic screwdriver yet, so I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm really excited to see that, and I don't know much about Jodie Whittaker. I do know that she actually did Antigone, where she played Antigone, and Christopher Eccleston played Creon. Yes,
exactly.
And so that's very exciting.
And she also, of course, what she's most known for is Broadchurch.
Broadchurch, yeah. I want to watch Broadchurch.
Yeah, and she played opposite, of course, of David
Tennant. Yes, so she's got a couple connections to some doctors in there, and
absolutely.
And doesn't that just happen? Matt Smith was on Secret Diaries of a Call Girl with Billie Piper, and all these people.
Yeah, you don't get cast in Doctor Who. You catch it. It's a communicable disease.
Well, it's the BBC. They just recycle costumes and sets and actors.
well, the thing about it is, and that's not just in the new series, because I remember Peter Davison, his doctor. There was a scene when he went back to Gallifrey, and one of the Gallifreyan guards was going to shoot him and kill him, who was played by Colin Baker.
Who
would be the next Doctor. Exactly.
Yes,
So he caught Doctor Who.
Of course he did.
So,
Amy Pond, she was one of the soothsayers in Pompeii, and of course Martha was a secretary in Torchwood.
In Torchwood.
Yes.
Well, she was in Torchwood before they had Torchwood.
Right.
And she died in the Battle of Canary Wharf. So she had the little earpieces in.
Sucked out her brain. Yes.
Exactly.
I love the discussions you have about Doctor Who.
Oh, exactly. But, the thing is, we're not just losing Peter Capaldi, who was a great actor, and I know that you're not caught up on Peter Capaldi,
not.
and we will get you caught up.
Don't yell at me, fandoms.
But I will get you caught up, because there's a lot of really good moments. But, of course, with the Christmas special, we'll have Peter Capaldi, Bill, which was his...
I did see an episode with
Bill,
her.
With Bill.
Yeah,
she'll be back. And David Bradley is going to be back, playing a role that's, although not the exact same role, but something familiar. He'll be playing the First Doctor.
Oh, yes. The one who played William Hartnell in the BBC movie about the making of Doctor Who.
Yes. A Journey Through Space and Time.
A Journey Through Space and Time.
Have you seen that?
I have. Oh,
did you get all weepy at the end?
Of course I did. Oh,
yeah. So instead of playing William Hartnell, of course, he's going to be playing that character. And he was, when he come walking, when I heard his voice, I knew who it was. I was like, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah, that's amazing that they got someone who looks so much like him. And then the fact that he sounds so much like him, too. Or maybe he voice trained, I don't know, to make his voice like that. But, man, that was spot on.
It was spot on. It's going to be amazing. Now, of course, we're not just losing Peter Capaldi. We're also losing Steven Moffat. He's stepping down as with this Christmas episode will be his last with Doctor Who. He's stepping down as showrunner, and Chris Chibnall is going to be taking over.
Okay, I don't know. See, like I knew before when Russell T Davies, he was the front runner, and then when Steven Moffat took over, I knew about him from Coupling, and after watching the couple episodes of that, I was like, this perfect, because the way he could handle a story.
Well, the thing is, he had already kind of proven himself with some iconic episodes of Doctor Who, the most famous, of course, being Blink, which he wrote. But there were other, Silence in the Library he created the character River Song. And there were other things that he's done. So, of course, when he took over showrunner, everybody was really excited. Now, with Chris Chibnall, he did a lot of stuff in Broadchurch. But he's mostly known for the scripts that he wrote for Torchwood.
Okay, all right, good.
Now he did write some stuff for Doctor Who. He wrote the episode 42, which was a David Tennant episode where this possessed sun was basically sucking this spaceship in, and it was possessing some of the members of the crew to kill other members of the crew. And this was a Martha Jones episode.
Okay.
And he did that one. He did Hungry Earth / Cold Blood, which was a Matt Smith episode that brought back the Silurians. So he wrote that one. But he also wrote Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. And he also wrote The Power of Three, the black cubes that fell out of the sky. And so he's kind of hit or miss, I think, with Doctor Who. But the thing about it is, some of the things he said he's going to do, of course, he's really shaking things up. He's cast a woman as the Doctor. He said he wants to make the show more cinematic. He also said he wants to get away from the one-and-done episodes where he wants to have cliffhangers. He wants the shows to kind of run a little bit. And
more serial, like they used. The very, very first Doctor Who's were very serialistic, very, you know.
Exactly. I mean, you have 6 episodes.
Right.
You know, and... Trial of a Time Lord was an entire season that had connected episodes. That was Colin Baker.
Excuse me. I wonder what that'll sound like.
So basically, you got Chris Chibnall coming in, and like I said, Steven Moffat, he did a lot for the show. I do have to say though, I think it is time for a new
fresh
eye. Yeah, because Steven Moffat, he's very creative. But the thing is, when you do something for too long, it just kind of gets you after a while. And the other thing too that about Steven Moffat is when you have that type of creativity, he got kind of into a habit of something that I think ultimately was his detriment, which was he loved painting himself in a corner. He would come up with this really big concept, and then see what he would do. What he wanted to do was he would challenge himself to write an ending, for that concept. He would build this thing up. I like to refer to this as the Lost problem. Where in Lost they build these things off and they didn't pay it off very well.
Right.
And so,
what was the big black smoke monster? Oh, it was.
We don't know.
Not much.
Yeah, exactly. And the
thing was the spirit of the island. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. And Steven Moffat, he would do that. The name of the Doctor, Trenzalore. The oldest question in the universe. He would do these amazing setups, and you're like, I wonder where this is going to go. And it would not. He didn't always stick the landing. Mm-hmm. And I'd have to say more times than not, when he was jumping the shark, he pretty much didn't stick the landing for the most part. Mm-hmm. He could come up with great concepts for single episodes, but when he would do these arcs, it didn't, he just wouldn't stick the landing.
Short stories rather than novels.
Yeah, the thing about it is, you're usually better off if you're going to come up with a big concept. You got to know where it's going, and coming up, and just kind of painting yourself into a corner. And I can tell you as a writer, I love doing that. I love coming up with making a challenge for myself and then trying to figure a way out of this challenge. In fact, a short story I'm working on right now is I tried to come up with the most blatantly horrendous cliche there is in horror and trying to do something fresh with it. I wanted to do that, and that's been kind of my challenge. But the thing is, I'm doing that in a short story. I'm not doing that in a novel. But now he just kind of had that habit of doing that, and it didn't always pay off for him. But you have to say that what he brought to Doctor Who, really has given Chris Chibnall the opportunity to do what he's going to be able to do with the show, because of course Steven Moffat took chances. He challenged the concept of the show, and Russell T Davies, just in the beginning, being able to bring certain things in the show they never addressed before, like the TARDIS was always just sort of a plot device. It allows us to have a story set anywhere we want to set it. It can be any kind of story because the TARDIS can go anywhere. But when the first time Russell T Davies has, the Ninth Doctor bring Rose back to her home, and they screwed up and she's been gone for a year. Well, what would that mean? It's like everybody's, they've been putting up posters and everything else. And it's like, at that moment I was like, oh, that's interesting, because they've never done that before. It's a possibility. Yeah. But for the most part in Old Who, they've done everything they could to eliminate the TARDIS as a way of moving the plot along. It was just to develop the setting, but they didn't want to use it as a plot device. In fact, they went as far as coming up with what they called the Blinovitch limitation effect.
No,
this was something the Third Doctor talked about.
Okay.
Because I want to say it was Joe Grant. It was either Joe Grant or Sarah Jane Smith. Asked him. They were in the middle of a situation. He says, "Well, you got a time machine. Why don't you just go back and if you don't fix it this time, why don't you not just go back in time and do it again?" And he says, "I can't because of the Blinovitch limitation effect." And of course, the villains walk in, so he can't explain what that is. Oh. But that was it. The Blinovitch limitation effect. It's like TARDISes are for settings only, not for plots.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking of Logopolis.
Mm-hmm.
When 4 regenerated into 5,
right? And
the TARDIS got stuck inside the TARDIS,
right?
Yeah,
well, it was the Master's TARDIS got caught in the Doctor's TARDIS, and it became a loop.
Yes, and they kept and it shrunk, and there was the thing about the Logopolitan, whatever they
Logopolis,
that they were reading off the numbers, and if they read the numbers wrong.
Block transfer computations. This allowed this was.
Oh my God, you geek!
I know this stuff. The Fourth Doctor was my guy. Yeah, block transfer computations have the ability to affect matter, and so the Doctor was going to use their computations to basically fix the TARDIS because it was getting old. Well, it was old when he got it. But to help repair the TARDIS, and of course the Master got involved in all that and kind of found things up. So, and there's some other things too.
So, do you think that the Logopolitans knew the Scasis paradigm?
Well, see, because that's the thing. The Scasis paradigm was sort of the same thing. It was like it was kind of a rehashing.
Yeah,
which is here's the funny thing about this is that Sarah Jane in that episode. Gives David Tennant's Doctor some advice that he completely ignored, which was that the Time Lords have had their time. It's too late for them. They're never coming back. You shouldn't try to bring them back. It's like they've had their time. You need to let them go. And of course, he didn't do that.
No.
He certainly did not do that. I mean, it took a few seasons, but and a 50th anniversary show, but he couldn't let it go. So. But it is going to be interesting to see the episode. It is playing in theaters. I may go ahead and watch it on television. I'm not the biggest fan of watching Doctor Who on BBC America. Not that there's anything wrong with the channel. I love the channel, but I'm just used
commercials, right?
Commercials.
Yeah,
I hate the commercials. It just drives me nuts. And it's even to a point now with commercials that even when I watch Walking Dead, I don't even watch it the night.
Right.
I watch it the next.
So you can fast forward it
through the commercials.
Exactly
Yes, I record it.
Yes,
I can't help it. And I know that it's those commercials that help,
pay for it,
for everything. But
great, wonderful.
Yeah, which is awesome. But I just don't want to watch them. But I may still watch it on television. I'm not. If for no other reason is that Doctor Who spoilers are like the worst. And I don't know if I could deal with just not being on the internet for those 2 days. If I may just have an embargo and just not, and so I can watch it in the theater. I love watching the Doctor Who episodes in the theater. But I am definitely looking forward to it. It'll be interesting to see what
the whole next next season's coming up. This whole run I'm excited about.
Oh yeah, well I'll definitely get you caught up on Peter Capaldi because there were some really
number 12.
Yeah, there were some really good moments in his episodes. I mean, there's some really standout meme-worthy episodes of things that he did that he really brought to the brought to the character some new stuff and some things that. Some people maybe are not as cool with sonic sunglasses, for example.
Sonic sunglasses.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So that was a thing.
Sonic meaning sound, and then it'd be like Oculus. I'm not certain.
Yeah, it was a weird thing.
Sound with your eyes. synesthesia. You know, you're crossing your senses there.
Oh, yeah.
I can hear with my eyes.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. So
I can taste colors.
Yeah. But so yeah, that was sort of a moment where people are like, really? Glasses, sunglasses, shades, Ray-Bans that can open doors. Really, we're going to go there. We're going to do that thing. But you know, like I said, there was a lot of stuff that in the Peter Capaldi episodes that I really loved, and of course, I'm going to be sad to see him go, but it's going to be really exciting to see what Jodie Whittaker does with the role, and we're not going to have to wait as long. I want to say April is when they're going to get started. Okay. April or August, I can't remember. I'm just used to
one of the A months.
One of the A months. Mm-hmm. I can't remember which one it is. I just know that usually you just wait for Doctor Who. That's just the nature of our of the show and loving this show.
It'll happen when it happens.
It happens when it happens. So, but so we'll see what happens come Christmas, and then of course next week. You haven't seen Star Wars yet.
I have not.
So, but you are planning on seeing it.
I am planning on seeing it, yeah.
That'll give us something to talk about next week. Because I've got a lot that I want to talk to you about that. So. Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I think it will be an interesting conversation because, absolute honesty, Star Wars is one of my earliest memories.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my, I can remember, the first movies watching in my life were Star Wars.
Well, I was 10 years old in 1977, and I remember in Beckley going to the theater when there were only like 2 theaters in the entire thing, and watching Star Wars. And so, I mean, it was all part of our childhood. So I'm definitely going to be interested in talking to you and getting your opinion of Star Wars, because this people's opinions are kind of torn on this one, which is interesting. It's like the critics gave it really high marks and the audiences are about 50-50.
Wow.
So, like I said, it'll be interesting to talk about that. So that'll be for next week.
All right.
And so, folks, Geek Watchers, thank you for listening for the GeekWatch Podcast. Sorry that it took so long, but as you can tell, it was worth the wait.
Oh, thank you. And thank you guys for listening.
All right. Until next time, keep it geeky, my friends.